Speedway Report is produced and broadcast by the Zeus Radio Network for Racers Reunion Radio. Well, April showers bring more May showers, evidently, as rain ran wild over this racing weekend. The Monster Energy Cup Series staged a Dover matinee this afternoon, checkered flag waving just a few hours ago. We'll bring you up to speed, and this is our first show for the month of May. May to Speedway Report is what December is to a toy store. All this and more coming up. Welcome to Speedway Report. We are live Monday, May the 6th, 2017, from the shores of Lake Norman in Race City, USA, Mooresville, North Carolina. I'm Patrick Reynolds, and thank you for joining the fastest half hour in racing. Now, in spite of all the rain, all the weather, there was still plenty of results to get to. We'll sift through, or I should say wade through, the results, the rain, the water, and the racing that did get in. Let's start over the weekend at Dover, Delaware. The Cup Series, Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Tour, raced this afternoon. And just a few hours ago, the checkered waved over the rooftop of Martin Truex Jr. Came from the back after a inspection penalty, came up through, won the race on a Monday afternoon. His very first career victory came at Dover, also on a Monday afternoon in 2007. This is his third win at Dover. Two of them have been on Mondays. Saturday, the Xfinity Series did get in for 200 laps, and $100,000 goes to Christopher Bell in the JGR Toyota. Johnny Sauter won the truck race there Friday evening. The NASCAR's Whelen Modified Tour also battled the weather as Stafford Springs, Connecticut, had to pull the plug on the Spring Sizzler for the second week in a row. Postponed by rain, they will try again this weekend. Hopefully third time is the charm up at Stafford. NASCAR's K&N Pro Series East Tour here in the South, in South Boston, Virginia, to be specific. They did not escape the rain either. Twin 100s for the series scheduled Saturday. Tanner Gray won the first 100 on Saturday, and they got the green flag for the second when 18 laps into it, rains came. They had to complete it Sunday afternoon. Derek Kraus was the winner of the second 100-lap race. Now, a little bit of good weather was seen throughout the country. The IMSA Tour was at the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. They looked to have a nice day. Of course, they had awful conditions, rain, wet conditions on Friday and Saturday for practice and qualifying, which is what most teams spent their time getting track time in. The show cleared up nicely for Sunday as that whole system moved east, gave all of us the rest of the problems for the weekend. But on Sunday afternoon in Ohio, Dane Cameron and Juan Pablo Montoya teamed up for the checkered flags for Team Penske and Acura. Now, a little bit south of where we are in Charlotte, the NHRA Series was in Atlanta, and, well, weather was okay there too. As I go on here, you'll see it wasn't too much after that. But, yeah, in Atlanta, Steve Torrance won in Top Fuel. Ron Capps won in Funny Car, and Andrew Hines took the win in Pro Stock Motorcycle. All right, let's get back to some rain as the Lucas Oil late models. These poor guys tried to race Friday in Tazewell, Tennessee, did not go. They are rained out, rescheduled for June 28th. Saturday, they had Optimism for Union, Kentucky. That was rained out. We're going to go again for another doubleheader on June 29th. Keep those two shows together. Now, the World of Outlaw late models got their show in Gaffney, South Carolina on Friday night. Ron Bales was your winner. Nice to see a local guy take the win over the touring regulars. Always, who doesn't like the underdog? World of Outlaw Sprint Cars, dang, on Friday in West Memphis, Arkansas, rained out. Saturday night, Hubstadt, Indiana, rained out, postponed to last night. Last night, rained out. Oof. To be determined for a makeup date for that race in Hubstadt. ARCA, more rain. Scheduled for Nashville, Tennessee on Saturday night. Rained out. Go figure. It was postponed to yesterday afternoon. They did get all 200 laps in. Christian Eckes won in a Venturini Motorsports Toyota. Grandview, Pennsylvania, their weekly racing on Saturday nights. The small block modified main went to Craig Von Doren. Sportsmen were won by Brad Brightbill. Those two guys won both main events 2 weeks in a row. The Cars Tour was wise as they raced at Ace Speedway in Altima, North Carolina on Friday night, so they got that race in before the rain came in for the rest of the weekend. Late model stock cars 125 goes to Josh Berry in the Dale Jr. Motorsports late model. And Bowman Gray Stadium in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, the home track to Speedway Report. They got rained out too. The plug was pulled about 6 or 6:30 Saturday night. They are so far in 3 races in 2019. Mother Nature has won 2, and they got the other show in just last weekend. The 200 got in, but they are 2 for 3 with weather winning those 2. So long-range forecast, we keep our fingers crossed and hope we're looking at good stuff here as we head into the second weekend of May. So over this past weekend, what we just saw here, what tripped your trigger? What floated your boat? I hear a couple beeps in my ear for folks signing into Facebook, watching our live feed and joining the conversation in the comments. What floated your boat over the weekend? I'm going to delve into it a little bit. Nothing really popped to me. The weather, obviously, I covered pretty harshly here. Nothing we can do about it, but that seemed to be the big story. Dover today, Dover over the weekend, the trucks, the Xfinity cars, the Cup Series. Yeah, nothing. I don't know. It was a good race today. I've seen worse. I've seen better. Some guys complained about the aero package today. Kyle Busch is not a fan of it. He struggled all weekend. So it's not a situation where Joe Gibbs Racing has trouble with the package because Martin Truex Jr. won the race, but Kyle certainly did not have a handle on it, so he doesn't like the package. Now, the package itself gave the cars more speed on the track. The engine rules, the new rules. Now, do we get away from great racing with higher speeds? Yeah, sometimes you can. We've seen it periodically over the years where they slow the cars down to make the racing better. Going faster is cool, does not necessarily translate to better racing. There was a talk over the weekend of are the cars going too fast at Dover? As far as a race car driver goes, I don't think they're ever going too fast to be a race car driver. As long as you're in the lead, you're not going too fast and the cars are beautiful. The aero package is fantastic because you're in the lead and winning races. However, when the speed gets to that point where we're not seeing very good racing because they're just going too fast and guys are hanging on as opposed to really racing, yeah, I get that. Then I would maybe classify it as going too fast, and I'll use air quotes for too fast. Racing doesn't really go too fast, but we do want to keep them at a point where the racing is at least respectable and competitive as opposed to just an aerodynamic parade, which is what we're creeping towards at Dover. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't anything. As I said, there was no real spectacular anything to pop here. Single car qualifying back in NASCAR, should it have ever gone away? I kind of like group qualifying in Formula One. I think that's pretty cool with how they do it there, their knockout system. But with the long road course racing, they've got a lot of minutes. It translates for the lap time with the road courses where each lap is several minutes, or a few minutes at least. That a lot of time is now wasted on the clock as far as qualifying goes, and teams will go out a couple of times. In NASCAR, they all just kind of sit there, wait, and it didn't quite work well on the ovals. I'd rather see group qualifying than single car qualifying. However, single car qualifying is a more pure format. Group qualifying is more entertainment, much like I complain about the championship every year since 2004. It's not legitimate, but it's entertaining. But the illegitimacy of the championship overrides my phoniness of a competitive title bout. But I digress. I'm getting off topic. I always go down that road when it comes to NASCAR and playoffs. So no real deep stories popped out at me. We covered the weather. We had good weather at Atlanta and in Mid-Ohio. Mid-Ohio remains a bucket list track for me. Did not make it there this weekend. So where does the meat of the sandwich lie this week on Speedway Report? Well, in a little bit of history. I teased it at the top of the show. I might have made a social media post on it during the week. This is May the 6th. This is the month of May. This is to racers what December is to an 8-year-old. This is the time. This is our time of year. February is big, but May has really much taken over. I think, my personal view, May has taken over what February means. February is the end of the winter, but there's almost year-round racing if you really want to watch and cover it. But May is the end of the winter, the big Daytona Speedway, so many short tracks in action, so many good teams. However, the history of the month of May has really popped up in my social media. Obviously, on when I go to YouTube or Google or anything like that, because of my browser history, Indianapolis really pops up heavy as we get into May. There's always historic racing, films, libraries, videos, all kinds of history that I lean to. And I have been watching and stuck on some of ABC's broadcasts of the Indianapolis 500 for so many years, longer than my lifetime. ABC has broadcast the Indy 500. They are the only network to have done so, and that will end in 2019 as NBC will cover the greatest spectacle in racing. So I look back, because I'm a sucker for these old races, the 60s, the 70s, the 50s. I mean, I just go back and watch some of these races I do remember seeing as a kid growing up. And I hesitate to call them the glory days, but I look at what we all remember. Remember the days of Jim McKay and Jackie Stewart doing auto racing on ABC. Absolutely. And I watched some of these old races compared to what we have today. Never mind the styles, the music, or even the technology or graphics. I know all the technology evolves over time. I get that. But even when I looked at Stewart and McKay, as big a fans I were of them, or the broadcasts themselves, now I look back and I say, what the heck were we watching? Really, if you look at it from an elevated point of view, the networks at the time, if you go back earlier than the 80s, they did not know how to cover racing. Still, even in the 80s, they were learning how to do it. They really developed their craft in the later part of the 80s and into the 90s. But the TV cameras, when you watch, they followed the leader. And as we all know, from watching racing for so many years, there's so much good racing, and the stories are often within the middle of the pack, deep in the pack during the race. The guys dropping back, guys moving forward, the good side-by-side racing battles. And our media coverage was so many years, we followed the leader. The cameras followed the leader. The producers and the directors, they just followed the leader. Used to largely cover a few auto races a year, but a lot of stick and ball sports. A stick and ball sport, if you follow the ball, if you don't know anything about the nuances of the game, but follow the ball, you largely have a good chunk of a competition or the game covered. When you follow the leader in auto racing, you really don't really cover what's really happening in the race. That's only one small part of it. Before we came on air tonight, I think one of the last ones I was browsing through was the 1978 Indianapolis 500. Bobby Unser was your winner. And it was largely follow the leader. They didn't know what to focus on, what was going on. Chris Economaki was in the pits, a very knowledgeable guy. McKay was an excellent broadcaster, and so was Stewart, a great analyst. But McKay would be the play-by-play guy, and he wasn't in racing week in and week out. He was a sportscaster. He could do Indianapolis just fine, one of the legends of broadcasting. But networks really had to bleed over to specific sports and specific guys. I had Bob Varsha as a guest on this show several years ago, and he told me about his auto racing career, how he broadcasts auto racing, but he's done a lot of sports outside of this sport. He's done gymnastics. For instance, as a broadcaster, he could certainly broadcast a gymnastic competition. He didn't know what he was looking at. He said that's the analyst's job, the guy right next to him. As a play-by-play guy, he could talk to the audience about what they just saw, describe the action. However, if he saw a vault, he had no idea if it was a good vault or a bad vault. That's what the analyst's job was. Cross that over to McKay and Stewart. McKay could tell you just fine what was happening, but Stewart would really analyze it and get into the nitty gritty of it. Now, McKay, as we see it today too on the big races of Indianapolis and Daytona, the races, I'll call it what it is, dumbed down. Then you don't go into the nuances, the tight nuances of auto racing. The stick and ball stuff, I don't know if they do that. I don't acknowledge that they do it for the World Series or the Super Bowl. It's just a football game or a baseball game. I think they broadcast them like they do everybody else. You don't need to tell fans what a down is. And they kind of, in motorsports over the years, they have talked down because there's so many once a year auto racing fans that are just watching this race. Yet there's once a year football fans, and they don't think they talk down in the game to what they just saw. It was kind of elementary and basic. So I see McKay and I see Stewart, and eventually they had to get away. And we had from McKay as a play-by-play guy, but then they had other guys in there. Jim Lampley was popular. Again, a good sports broadcaster, but not an auto racing guy. It wasn't until I'm going to say, I believe it was 1988 when we finally had Paul Page on the play-by-play for the 1988 Indianapolis 500 for ABC. Now here, in my lifetime, was a voice of IndyCar. This guy studied under Sid Collins, the voice of the Indy Motor Speedway Racing Network, the radio coverage. Paul Page, one of the best, if not the best, the voice. He's like Ken Squire to NASCAR, Paul Page is to IndyCar for me. That voice, that personality, he knew. He didn't just tell you what was going on. He knew what was going on. He lived and breathed IndyCar. And I even looked at the graphics and introductions for some of these races. And ABC's Wide World of Sports really almost treated like an introduction to the Indianapolis 500 is almost a promo for themselves. They used graphics of checkered flags and drawings of race cars, and they would veer away and talk about the month of May and talk about, hey, they had been to the Kentucky Derby for, in Louisville earlier in the month, and they had been to the Preakness Stakes, and we had a few seconds of racing film filling in, but there was a whole lot of self-promos of what we did, and now we're doing the Indy 500. And they weren't in the days of McKay and Stewart, as well as the days, the introductions, the graphics. They didn't talk to the auto racing fan, the guy that knew the sport, that knew racing, and wanted to tune in and see the race. They didn't talk to him and didn't speak of it. I don't think they knew how. I just don't think they knew how. They gave it a decent effort, and it's not like they disliked Indianapolis. ABC probably loved Indianapolis, but they just didn't know how to do it. Where they did have a sense of baseball, of football, of Monday Night Football, of NFL playoffs, of the NBA. They had a sense of what they were doing. And if they didn't, it was a much smaller arena to cover. With an event like the Indianapolis 500, which is so huge, just literally and figuratively, with 300,000 to 400,000 people in attendance, and the site of the Speedway just so big, it's a difficult event to cover on your best day when you got people that know what they're doing. In today's day, with the budgets, the technology, there's so many cameras and angles and graphics, I am expecting an excellent job out of NBC. But I look back at what we used to look at, and even at the time I go, what the heck were we watching? It was all we knew. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. So it was something interesting. There's still, in spite of the criticism of what we did years ago, it still warms my heart to hear McKay and Stewart describe the action at Indianapolis. And we begin, as we are, May 6th here on Monday. As we head into this weekend, it's the road course race for the IndyCar series, as they will run on Saturday afternoon. And I am glad a form of the month of May has returned to IndyCar several years ago. Running one race with the 500 at the end of the month and being there all month just to continually practice in 4 days of qualifying, the cost of doing that has outraced the purse money and the prize money that you get back. So to do that for the entire month, we would see a much smaller field do that. I'm happy we can bring back the month of May and have 3 solid weekends, as later this month, or later this week, excuse me, the Indy cars in the support series should be on the track Thursday, I believe, for practice. And the Grand Prix will be on Saturday afternoon, with Mother's Day being Sunday. So I'm thrilled for May. I'm thrilled for Indianapolis. And I'm still heartwarmed by the history of the coverage of ABC's Wide World of Sports. But I'm really happy with the technology and the improvements. As much as we all complain about what we have for today's coverage in the media, and this guy sucks and this network sucks, and we're back and forth of that. Go pull up old footage and old coverage of the Indianapolis 500 from the 70s. You will love the coverage that we have today, in spite of the criticisms, which are fair. Yeah, it's May's here. I'm happy. I'll be up in Indianapolis, heading up that way in a couple of weeks, and thrilled. This is December to me. This is Christmas time. As we step away here shortly for the evening, I do want to talk to you on a more humanitarian level. If you have some spare prayers lying around, the UNC Charlotte shooting of last week had 2 victims, and one of them a hero to stop the shooter, and we lost them. We lost Cliff Nelson and Sonny O'Sullivan this past week. Big part of the modified history in the Northeast where I grew up. And locally here in Race City, USA, Mooresville, North Carolina, police officer Jordan Sheldon lost his life in a traffic stop Saturday night after he was shot. So racing sadness, local sadness. I ask for prayers for all involved, for those here in Race City, as well in the racing and modified community. And before we leave, let's talk about our Racer of the Week as we pay tribute to Motor Week Illustrated, in which this show was formed. I want to talk about winning any kind of race in any discipline of motorsports is hard and takes a whole lot of focus. Well, this guy won his first NASCAR K&N Pro Series East race and is becoming a quick study in turning left, after already being very skilled at going fast. The 2018 NHRA Pro Stock champ won in South Boston, Virginia on Saturday to claim a NASCAR trophy. Tanner Gray is the Speedway Report Racer of the Week. In between our broadcasts, keep up on the world of auto racing with SpeedwayReport.com. This broadcast and all of our past shows are uploaded onto the site. We also have racing articles to read. Keep up on our past broadcasts. We're on Facebook at Racers Reunion and Speedway Report with Patrick Reynolds. We're on Twitter at Speedway Report and at Speedway Pat. We're at RacersReunion.com in the forum. And if you are connected to me on LinkedIn and our YouTube channel, we've got all the past episodes there. Big thanks to everyone on the Facebook Live feed for joining the conversation during the show tonight. Now go see a race at a track near you. As I said, it's May. Your grassroots ovals, drag strips, dirt tracks, pavements, road courses, everything's running right now. They're the foundation of the auto racing world. Go to one this weekend. I want to thank all of the military past and present for the freedoms we enjoy as Americans in our daily life, including the simple things like bench racing right here on a Monday night. Freedom is not free, and a veteran paid that bill for us. To all of the men and women who are defending freedom and watching Speedway Report, take care of yourselves and come home soon. A special salute to the teachers, school staff, firefighters, police officers, and paramedics in our own communities. They are quiet and modest heroes every single day. God bless and thank you. You have been watching the Speedway Report from the shores of Lake Norman in Race City, USA, Mooresville, North Carolina. Please like our Facebook page, Speedway Report with Patrick Reynolds, and follow me on Twitter at Speedway Pat. Now, on the Drag Racing List Facebook page, so if you're on Facebook, when we're over, go to Drag Racing List. Racing and Rockin' is coming up. Bill Pratt, John Bachman, and Barb, who likes to stay in the shadows but is a big part of the show. They've got your drag racing chat coming up. We will be back live here on Facebook in 1 week, Monday, May 13th. We will look hopefully at the Spring Sizzler at Stafford, IndyCar's Grand Prix at Indianapolis, and the Kansas Cup weekend, and a whole lot of short track racing. Thank you all for joining us. Happy Mother's Day, everyone. That's coming up this Sunday. So don't forget, fellas, Mother's Day this Sunday. I will see you all next week.